think you were mentioning there Google Docs being like that
Absolutely.
place where you're collecting, you're brainstorming with Ben, as well as your scripting. Now, do you have like some of this stuff that you could show, like that
Yep.
process happening between the collaboration tools?
Absolutely. Let me just share my screen. Okay. All right. You good? Can you see my screen here?
I can see it. Everyone
Yep.
else too?
Great. Just let me know if you can't. So everything starts with us with Google Office, right? Like we use Gmail for all email. We use Google Docs like crazy. Boris Effects, we're a completely remote company. Early on in the pandemic, we shifted to at home, and we've never looked back. I find it actually better. We're kind of a lot more productive. We were like half and half remote pre-pandemic, but once everything shut down, it was very easy for us to be like, okay, well, the decisions have been made for us. Let's just all stay remote and give up our offices. And in that, like
Ryan?
cloud. Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you mind just zooming in a little bit? There's just a request from Wolf just to see a little bit of the legibility there in terms of
Yep.
percent. Thanks, man.
Sure. How's this?
Yeah, that looks better to me too.
Cool. And let me actually start at the bottom, because the way we work, this is actually the most recent additions, but let me go all the way to page 13. This is kind of I'll start you guys off with where it went. Yeah, as you can see, Ben original. Which is funny. It's like not that, like there are certain parts like the open is almost word for word. Like Ben is a fantastic writer, and Ben and I have worked together for multiple years, and he really has the voice down. Ironically, by the way, that is his voice as well, which is the ultimate luxury to have one of your content creators also be a skilled VO artist. I don't know if I could go back, right? It is unbelievable to just be like, yeah, we want to tweak it. Like, just go ahead and re-record a line for us. So he does spoil me in terms of that. But, so early on, this is really what it looks like. We're, scripting things out, just writing things down. He's sharing this. Obviously, we're both in this document, right? But we've figured out a way to work together on shared documents, and it kind of like, we jokingly kind of call it like no creeps, which means like if somebody's in a document, I get very nervous if I'm in writing and I see like, Nick Harauz's little, head pop up, like he's in the document with me, or if you see like, anonymous raccoon, in there. I don't know why. I'm like, hey, get out. I want to write here. So Ben, we use Slack for internal communication pretty much, all day long. So, Ben will basically Slack me and be like, all right, like, why don't you jump in there and take a look? And then I will come in, read it, really like what he's done here. And at some point with a project like this, which is something we're really working on, I'm like, all right, you got to give me like a day. And then what I do is copy and paste my version into V2, right? So if I'm going to head up from Ben original now, you're going to see here, everything in blue is how we keep organized, is my kind of additions here. So I'm adding in some lines. I'm really acting as copy editor, kind of second assistant in terms of this. Ben's doing the bulk of the writing. But you could see here, I crossed out big money. I don't know why. You probably guess why. I'm like, let's not put big money in there. And these kind of things as well. And then there's some big blocks I jumped in, I think down here, where I really wanted to rewrite the transition section, because I didn't think that was working. So it's really like almost like him handing me off this shared document, and then I will jump in, kind of make my notes, and then when I'm ready, absolutely like hand it back to him. And then then the fun stuff happens, which is the debate, like, well, here's why I wrote it that way, here's why I think it this way. And when Ben and I got happy with it, I think you'll be able to see. Let me just scroll up to V3. I may be too big in here to see comments. Let me just jump back to 100% and see if we can see some comments. Okay, here's where, let's go back. No. Yep. So at some point, we brought our coworker Ross Shane, who's the chief product officer for Boris Effects. Like, he's a great, fellow writer as well. Works on a lot of the Mocha marketing you see. Has been working for Mocha for years, and he's just a great sounding board. So Ben and I got something we like, and we're just like, hey, will you take a look at this? Ross is always going to respond in the comments, right? Because he's not a direct partner, so he's not going to really mess with our copy because he knows, we're in here, we know what's going on. So he jumps in with the comments. This really makes sense. That makes sense. Kind of going back and forth in that, and that's kind of how it goes, just round and around and around, until we get to the point that we feel like we have a script, and at that point, definitely sharing with Boris, hey, this is what we're thinking for a script. Like I said, at this point, we have a great working relationship with Boris, and he's pretty much like, you guys know a lot better than me. Go ahead and run with it. If that's what you're thinking, everything makes sense to me. Yeah. And then we start to break it down and really start looking at line for line, like what are we going to start showing here, and that starts up here as well. I think there's some of this stuff. You can see we went through a lot of rounds.
Yeah.
Here's where this is actually interesting. This is where Ben's starting to break it down into actual sections. And this is really interesting. So he's starting to paragraph things out now. And it's almost like at this point, you're starting to see it less as a script and more as a video, right? With natural breaks. Like we're starting to have this section. We're starting to have this section. I'm a big fan of putting these type of videos together as like a modular video. So at any point in time, I want to repurpose this. Like if we're going to spend 5 months on a video, like it absolutely should not be just one video when we're done with it. Like I want to pull that lens flare section out and make that its own standalone piece. I want to pull the transition section out. I want to use that. I want to cut it down to a 60. I want to see, like, can we get something for social that maybe like with, these sections taken out and get that length down, 5 to 7 minutes is an eternity, asking someone to watch. So is it smarter to, cut this down into a shorter piece? Honestly, that was a lot of Ross's suggestions too. Like, the first couple rounds, like, this is great, but this is like a 14-minute video. Like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
But that's the problem. Sapphire's 270 effects. It's been around for 20 years. There's a ton to talk about. So the challenge really for us is getting those points across in some sort of reasonable amount of time. Like it just, in my mind, gets exponentially harder to produce quality content as you go to shorter lengths. It's the concept of making the movie or making the trailer, and that trailer is so important to get people in the seats to see the movie, and nothing about a completely different skill set to make that movie. But when you're working and trying to get across this complex message in a short amount of time to make that successful is extremely difficult. I say it all the time, man. When I see some of these pre-rolls on YouTube that somehow make me laugh, communicate a brand message and a call to action in 4 seconds, I just tip my cap to Madison Avenue and think there's someone hopefully earning their paycheck who came up with that, because that is such a difficult thing to do. And that's where we're at right now. 4 seconds, right? 4-second pre-roll. What are you communicating?
Yeah, it's incredible how quickly you have to convey a message to the audience in order to just hopefully retain their attention for even a minute. And I wanted to shift a little bit from the Google Doc you were showing and sort of see what's happening behind the scenes in Trello as well. Yep. And I noticed a question in the Q&A that I'm going to mention to you, Brian. The question was, do you ever use Airtable? And from Lorenzo, and I just wanted to mention that I have not used Airtable except for once when a client asked me to go inside and just review what was being collaborated on. So I haven't had any extensive use of Airtable, but what I have used quite a bit, and I'll show a few slides towards, is Notion. Brian, have you used Airtable at all?
I have not. I'm always open to trying new things, but I love that line you said at the beginning, which is about app fatigue. To me, it's so true. I use Google Docs exclusively because that's what we have, that's what we use, and it's almost like sometimes I get app paralysis if I have too
Yeah.
many things that I'm frozen. Love the idea of keeping it simple. Like if scripting is better on your phone, or I sometimes write a lot in Evernote just because I'm in Evernote keeping notes from a meeting. So I am all about keeping it as simple as possible, and whatever works for you. Google Docs is just what we have, and it's the easily and most readily available tool.
It is a great tool, and I've come to use Google Docs and Sheets more and more over the years, and the fact that it also, I was talking in my last session, integrates well with Slack, where you can get notified when
Absolutely.
people make changes to the document. You can share the document, you can follow that thread. Is it at least keeps you, like you said, hopefully contained within an app system, so that you're not branching out to other apps.